There you go. You gotta like that music change for Lynne Taylor. Lynne Taylor with us tonight. It is a great joy to have you on the air with us tonight. You, my friend, do a better job than anyone else I've seen out there. Bring attention to the fact that we've gone asleep at the wheel on the United Nations and those who wish to authoritarianly destroy the American student, or at least take away their liberties and freedoms. And so I got to ask you tonight. I saw the email that you sent out, and it's a great joy for anybody to be on her mailing list because she sends the stuff out. It just makes you really mad. But you sent me something today about God mockers, and I couldn't go on without making certain that you were on tonight. Apparently, the
Okay.
UN and other entities are working with the Department of Education in our U.S. Congress to destroy the freedoms and liberties of our students and to destroy our faith. Can you give us some insights? What exactly do you mean by God mockers?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. I just wondered, you asked the question and it kind of weirded out for a minute, so I'm not questioning this.
Okay. Great. Go right ahead. What is
Okay,
God mocking?
okay. What I meant by that is that you have got the Occupy Wall Street people who are planting the siege upon the West, right? We all know that. Don't know if you know, but they are tied to Antifa, Black Lives Matter, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But they also attach themselves to the education opt-out movement that was popular just a few years ago, and all those radical ideas that came with it, not just the protests, because, protests under our Constitution are part of our First Amendment rights, and those are guaranteed. But it was all the anarchy and mayhem that came with it that has been attached and approved by not only the Department of Education, but every state and district and American territory out there to teach lessons combining all this kind of garbage, if you will, Ken, to our children, not just in public schools, but in any type of educational setting, be it libraries, museums, community events, because this is supposed to be the agenda of changing our nation from the UN using Gaia worship, satanic worship,
Wow.
and it's all woven in through the science, technology, engineering, and math, after school programs, nature programs that will show you that Earth is more important than people, and how the Earth is supposed to be our lover, and that we are supposed to pledge our whole being to the Earth and all that's in it. Now, I did an interview earlier this week where we went into detail about some of this as far as the earth worship that the United Nations is embracing in the Department of Education, and our education system, again, in all genres, is embracing, and that's that sustainability stuff from the Sustainable Development Goals. So it sounds like it's a neat package in one way because, yes, we're helping conserve the earth. But when you look at the underbelly of it, Ken, it's mocking God in the fact of the earth is the one who created us. We owe our lives to the earth, and the Ark of Hope carries the Earth Charter that's sanctioned by the UN. And instead, it's supposed to mock the Ark of the Covenant that God instructed all those people eons ago to construct to hold the Ten Commandments.
Wow. And so as I'm listening to you tonight, this is what people on a certain side of the aisle would say, especially Black Lives Matter. We've got to stop teaching what we've been teaching because it doesn't include the right history. And so the right history has to be rewritten and then presented to students so that they know the difference, and they can be proud of their race. How does that apply in this particular case?
Well, how it applies, Ken, is that because you've got all these socialistic viewpoints that are coming in and rewriting our history, they're not doing a good enough job of giving everyone the whole picture. In other words, they're not teaching the children in any educational setting how to think. They're teaching them what to think. And if you read my article, which is called Are You Ready for Radical Upheaval? It's where all the information is that you can find it on my blog, CommonCoreDiva. That's what this particular article was all about, was how it was taking all the socialism, the guyism, the Satanism, balling it all together and then showing it to your kid as this is how you should think, this is how you should act, and you should be a social justice warrior because if they're not thinking the way we need to have them think, you're not a good enough citizen.
Wow. Now, when we talk about Gaianism and the
Yes.
whole idea of environmentalism and climate change, people would say, "Wait a minute, Lynn. Wait a minute. Where is caring for the whales and the sharks? Where is that worship of the creature? I don't get that. Is it that you hate science?
No, it's not that you hate science, okay? Science, through this educational shift, Common Core, the STEM, all the United Nations, UNESCO, Sustainable Development Goals, has changed it from the fact of the earth was created 7 days by a holy and loving God who
Mm-hmm.
gave us everything we could ever need, promised us that, we'd never run out of supplies, and all we had to do was take care of the earth. But what this shift has done is taken it and put it that science is the God to be worshipped, which is why we're seeing such a meltdown in some cases over a lot of what's going on because there's been so much faulty research that's been said, oh, this is scientific. Well, who has decided to shift what science is supposed to be? The United Nations.
Wow. Now, there are some people that would say, Lynn, you mentioned Satanism, um, basically human worship uh, as fault lines here. But my kid doesn't read any of that in their school books. At least from what I've seen, it's not in their school books. And quite frankly, all the time that my kid is on the computer with their teacher, I don't hear them talking about any of that stuff. So, is there any proof of any of this stuff that you're alleging?
Absolutely. If you, okay, in this particular artist reference about are you ready for radical upheaval? I link you back, and I'm trying to look at it on my phone as we're talking, so please forgive me.
Oh no.
I give you a link, and it says here the simple statement that Agenda 21 2030 is tied to Gaia also points to my previous evidence of ties to Satanism as well. And I give you an underlined link, Ken, to where when you click on that, it will take you. Hang on, let's see if it does it. Let's see if it does it. Okay, yeah, it takes you to look at this. I don't know if you can see it. How kids are being indoctrinated into Satanism through public school. Because what's happening is they're using science as the kingpin. That, hey, it wasn't necessarily God who made the world, it was science. Now,
Yes.
Satanism is not the only one that embraces that, okay? Guyism does too. Climate change does too. So it's not just the fact that they're teaching the kids to worship Satan, but you need to understand that, yes, they are, just in a very nefarious way. And they'll tell you in that, oh no, we're just doing these in after school satanic clubs because we want kids to have fun with science. But in those articles that I link you to, Ken, you can see the coloring pages. You can see some of the workbooks that are used that are promoting the United Nations. And if you look at the root of the United Nations, we all know it's rooted in Luciferianism, which is a
Exactly.
form of Satanism.
Satanism. Lynn,
mocking God in the sense that God doesn't matter. People
yeah,
don't matter. We're His most precious creations, and we don't matter.
Lynn, there was a
Yes.
Philadelphia teacher who tweeted that she was uncomfortable with the whole idea of doing online teaching out of the classroom because she didn't want parents to be involved in what was being taught, especially conservative parents. Is there a reason for her not wanting parents to actually hear what goes on in the classroom?
Well, not knowing what specific school district she's in, or what school she's or what subject she's teaching, I
Yeah,
would hazard a guess to say it's probably that the same things I'm talking about are what she's afraid the parents will see. And here's where parents need to step it up. We don't need to just go, okay, well, Mr. and Mrs. So and so, I don't need classroom. I don't need to see what Johnny and Susie's learning. No, as my friend Alice Linehan from Texas has said for years, we should shift that conversation from I can't see teaching to I demand to see what you're teaching, because our taxpayer dollars, whether they're in school or not, whether they're in public school or not, we the people pay for education. Our property taxes pay for education. And if we really want to rock the boat, we need to not pay those taxes until education gets corrected.
exactly. Now, there are lots of parents now racing to the gate to enroll their children into school. Um,
Mhm.
Walmart even has commercials now showing people buying back to school clothes for them to sit at home in. I don't understand that. But uh, there are people who are racing to get their kids enrolled in school, only learning that the school is going to be online learning. And
Right?
so I have to ask you, are there other options than the local public school by which children can learn without the appendages of sustainable Agenda 21 education?
You absolutely can. There is a wonderful, goodness, there's a wonderful school. It's Freedom Project Education. It's based out of Wisconsin. I believe they're tied into with the John Birch Society. So you could look into them. You also can talk to folks like myself who have years and years of experience into what true homeschooling is, because this is one of the things that has angered a lot of people, is that they're calling what's happening now in the name of COVID education, that everyone's homeschooling. And well, no, you're not. If you're using the system in any way, what they're directing you to teach, that's school at home. Homeschooling is when the parent decides what is to be taught, how it's taught, and administers that. This is not the same animal in any stretch of the imagination. Now, here's the danger in what we're seeing when you said about avoiding the sustainability and all that kind of stuff. Because it is so permeated our entire communities, which was the goal all along, Ken, because it wasn't just about changing the schools, it was about changing the communities so that the communities could change the citizens. So you're going to be very hard pressed to escape it. I made a challenge in an interview I did yesterday morning about I dared the people to go through the rest of the day trying to find any sort of advertisement or conversation where we didn't hear things about climate change and the sustainability and the development goals through education or the economics, because it's all woven in together. And one of the things that is so awful about this God mocking that we're seeing happen, not just in schools, but in our society, is it puts importance on the economy over your people. And
Mm-hmm.
we know from studying history in other civilizations that anytime economics rules people, it is well.
Lynn, got to ask you here because
Mhm.
people are quite curious now.
Yes.
I'm not wearing tin foil. Just want to just. I'm not wearing tin foil, but it's kind of weird that schools do reopen, but churches remain closed. Is that a curiosity to you in regards to that?
No, not really, and here's why.
Yes.
You've got a government that is, pardon my French, hell bent on becoming the nanny state entity for us all. So, what better way to do it than the school?
So let me get this straight. The government has control over public schools. Does it also have control over charter and independent and private schools too, and parochial schools?
Absolutely, absolutely. We have talked about this before, Ken, and
Yep.
every student succeeds at. Remember, page
Mm-hmm.
17, all education has to be aligned to the same thing. And if it's aligned to the same thing, there is no choice. So why is our government throwing money through congressional bills right now in the name of COVID or the name of anything else they can possibly think of to throw billions and trillions of dollars at the fact that we have to give emergency education money so that all these people who are using the education system, not just for education, but for extended services around education. We've got to be able to pump money into that. And you know as well as I do, anytime anyone shows you a chart of the past few years and how much money's been thrown at education, but yet we're not seeing that money actually mean anything other than our children are coming out less educated, less able to read, less able to spell, critically think, and they're expected to stay in the government system and through all kinds of ways because they can't do this and they can't do that. So we're seeing this happen now in the name of COVID. But what we're seeing is that Congress is also putting into a lot of these congressional bills, especially in the name of COVID, Ken,
Mm-hmm.
uh, climate change and sustainability as part of the solution for what's going on in America, including education. I mean, I've detailed bills that are out there. HR2, the moving forward one, is
HR
a
two.
huge one.
Yes.
Yeah, at least $1 trillion price tag. And in part of that, in the name of education and safety and sustainability and all that stuff, you have to go in and either retrofit or renovate every school. You have to rip out every water fountain across the nation in any type of government setting because they're not green enough or they're not COVID safe enough.
Oh my God. This is part of the Green New Deal. Am I correct?
Oh yeah, it's just woven in different ways. And part of the thing that really stymied me about HR2 in the moving forward act, it's supposed to be a bill, Ken, about updating public highways and transportation systems, but yet education is mentioned almost 400 times. And in some of those instances, um, you see the Secretary of Education being able to have, oh yes, to expand government in some way, the Department of Transportation, the Department of Energy. They're going to get to open up all kinds of Pandora's box too. But here's the scary thing. Almost every mention of education through these different unconstitutional departments that we have only uses education to do one thing, Tim:
What's that?
create a barely educated, credentialed workforce for sustainability, climate change, and any other thing else the government wants to do.
We're talking with Lynne
So
Taylor
no,
tonight,
I don't
Common Core
see,
Diva.
yeah, I don't see the schools opening and the churches not as shocking as some people because I know what the agenda is, and the agenda is to force religion down and to bring nanny state up and to bring all this other God mocking crap with it, if you will.
But you don't understand, Lynn. The Republicans and Donald Trump are against this Common Core stuff. They fight tooth and nail not to have Common Core as a part of the education system. And
No, no.
but wait a minute. Donald Trump crossed the street and raised the Bible. The education and faith are so vital and important. Tell me why that's not true.
Okay, number one, even the devil in the scriptures, he just left out key points. And that's what we've seen through some of this sustainability, the sustainability development goals, what we've seen through the Gaia worship, the Satanism that's woven into the STEM, all that kind of stuff. Now, the reason why I say that Trump and his administration are not against this is, first of all, he made a campaign promise to get rid of Common Core. He made
Yes.
a promise in the campaign to get rid of the massive data mining. What has he done? He signed the Foundations for Evidence for Privacy Act, which gutted every other type of privacy act that was out there to open Pandora's box, if you will, to increase the amount of data mining. And if you look at some of these sustainability bills, like HR2 and some of the other ones I've detailed, you're going to see that it opens up data a thousandfold. And just this past week, I was a fly on the wall to a UNESCO artificial intelligence
They let you in?
webinar. Yes, it did. I loved it. Anyway, I taped the whole thing, put it on my Facebook page for CommonCoreDiva. Didn't realize it was sideways, but I'm like, you know what? Y'all are going to get the information anyway. But the point of it is that the artificial intelligence is part of this technocracy. It is part of the thing about, dumbing down humans and replacing humans because we're just nothing. But the point of it was, in this particular webinar, they pointed out that by the time not only the United States data mining efforts, but combined with the United Nations and all these others, you ready? 50 million personal private data points will be harvested not only through education, but through every facet of our lives.
Whoa. Whoa. And this is UNESCO making this
Yeah,
proclamation.
Now,
Wow.
now, as far as the administration, yeah, you're going to hear buzzwords from mainstream media like, "Oh, well, we defunded this part of the UN or this part of UNESCO," and he did sign us out of the Paris Agreement and all this. Then you tell me why there are so many executive orders that have been signed to promote national workforces that are tied to career tech education, which tied to Common Core and the Sustainable Development Goals. Why is he such a disciple, along with his daughter, his wife, and his Secretary of Education, for increasing the amount of STEM through the curriculum available to homeschoolers, private schoolers, parochial schoolers, public schoolers, charter schoolers, hybrid schoolers, adult learners. Those being reintroduced into the education system and workforce system because they've been uh, uh, released from prison, those who have retired from the military. This is coming after a single person in the whole thing was to make it seem like an American change. Because if we ever said, "Oh, well, the UN wants us to do it," then everybody would have gone, "Oh, no, we can't." But because we have corrupt politicians, including our president, previous president, and several administrations back, promoting this and increasing this. That's why I'm not going to buy. He's against Common Core. He's against this sustainable development stuff. He's not. Watch what he says, then look at what he does.
That's a very good statement to make, and it should be how we judge everyone, period, when it comes to performance. And there are a lengthy number of promises that he's kept, but Common Core is a major unkept promise when it comes to that.
Now, Ken, let me point out
Yes.
something. Okay, people are going to hear this. They're going to think, "Well, she hates Trump." No, I don't hate him. I don't know him. I trust him. Okay, but I don't trust Biden either, and here's why. Because under Obama, if you in my archives on my blog, you will see the terrible jobs they did. And Biden is sold out to the Sustainable Development Goals and also bed with big unions. So do I trust either one of them? Oh no. But here's the thing. The people need to understand there are Constitution parties out there, libertarian parties out there, and all other kinds of parties out there that if people would look into those candidates and see how they want to honor the Constitution, how they want to shrink government, not increase it, because Biden and Trump want to increase it, and Trump already has. And under Obama, with Biden's okay, they increased government too. But my point is, you go to ballotpedia.org, I think it is.
Yeah.
You can see there are over 1,000 candidates right now for the president. And the argument about, well, if you don't vote for the Republican, you vote for the Democrat because we're the lesser two evils. Well, let's look at what God said. God said, we weren't supposed to choose evil, lesser or greater. We were supposed to go for truth.
Exactly.
And
Lynn, I got to ask you here before we get going, because I need to ask you this question, and we'll go back to speaking on that subject matter. But the vaccine that is being prepared and is expected to be available in the late winter, early spring of next year. There's some people saying it'll be out this December. I'm not there yet. But for those who, well, let me just put it this way: will Americans be mandated to have the vaccine?
I truly hope not, because if so, Ken, that is such an egregious intrusion on your not only constitutional rights, civil rights as well. And get to know the Civil Rights Act of 1964 or how it's been amended, because a lot of what we've talked about tonight, not only is it against the Constitution, but it's also violating federal law and our civil rights as well.
Exactly. The reason why I asked that is because there is conversation from the State Department and from the United Nations of the fact of travel. And in order to travel from one nation to another, the foreign nations may require U.S. citizens to have a vaccine against COVID. And I don't want to take a vaccine personally. I don't want to take a flu vaccine. I don't think they work. But that's my opinion, and I should be able to be respected for that.
You should, and here's the thing. Government is supposed to protect our rights, Ken, not trample on them. And so I'm not saying I wouldn't. I believe in personal liberty and personal freedom, first of all, as guaranteed by our Lord and Savior, and second of all, backed up by our Constitution. And I've done research. If I so choose to whatever, then that's on me, because that is my personal liberty and that's what we're seeing so trounced upon now. And if it's in a small area, it's not going to think it's going to become in a greater area. Okay? Being concerned about vaccinations to travel internationally is one thing. My concern is, okay, if we're going to do that in the name of international travel, how quickly is it going to be that we have to have it to even go out of our own house?
Exactly, from state to state, because now you have New York. New York has a blockade up where you can't enter in without a check that you don't have COVID. And you have to quarantine yourself 14 days once you get into New York and prove that you've been there for 4. This is scary stuff. And so I go back in finality in question to you regarding Satanism and hostility towards God in the classroom. How important, and I know that people have to work, and you got 3 or 4 kids, and you have to figure out how to use the laptops and everything, and all that stuff, and do your work from home and everything else. I know that. I got that. But how involved should the parent be right now? Not just enrolling their children, but in the online learning that their child receives via that computer.
How involved should they be? 155%.
Thank you. And can you tell us why?
And I tell you why.
Yeah,
Because if you don't know what the system is feeding your children, how are you going to know your children? I mean, it is your charge as a parent. I mean, those children are a blessing from the Lord above. And we are their first teachers. We are their first nurturers. We are their first stewards. And if we cannot understand who our children are, uh, and the way the system is turning them into someone else, we're in bigger trouble than we realize.
exactly. Lynn, the vote's going to be important. For those of us who are going to vote for Donald Trump, what should we do to hold his feet to the fire of first the commitment to get rid of the 501c3 requirement for churches, and then the second one to eliminate Common Core?
I would say do your research. If you really, even after all the evidence of the unconstitutional moves that he's made in his office, the usurpation of power in his office, if you still just feel you have to vote for him, I would say be careful because you get what you vote for.
Yeah,
I would urge you to look at some of the other candidates, and if enough people get behind those people who are constitutional and God fearing and would, preserve our nation rather than, destroy it, I would get behind them. Because if enough people do that, we might just make it can. But through it all, if you're still going to vote for whomever you're going to vote for, and you feel that there's room that you can hold their feet to the fire, get to know your Constitution, both federal and statewide. Now, I know in D.C., you guys have a Constitution, do you?
no, we have a home rule charter, but people blasted that away
Yeah,
with
but
COVID.
you would yes, you would get to know it, but then also look at not just who you elect for president, but who are you sending to represent you in Congress? Because Congress
Yes,
is is way more wicked in all this stuff. They're supposed to set the laws and set the bills and the funding, and the president is only supposed to uphold the law. And if it's an unconstitutional law they're sending, a bill they're sending him to turn into law, he should stop it. No
and,
matter who's in office, they
Lynn, you're
should
so
stop
right.
it. But yeah,
There are too many people that do the wrong thing when it comes to voting. I'm just going to vote for Trump because he's going to solve all the problems. He's not going to solve all of the problems. He can't. That's not his role. He's to uphold the
that's
law.
not his role.
You need to
It's
send
our
the
role.
exactly. We are to send
It
the
is our role.
representatives. Exactly, and that's
Yes,
the
because
difference.
yeah,
I'm
and
sorry.
if they're not going to go ahead.
We're both angst here, but it's the whole idea of how do we approach Common Core? If we're citizens, we approach it as a republic. If we're a mob, we approach it like Biden and the left, as a democracy, and then we get what we pay for.
Right. Well, you're going to get what you pay for either way,
Either way,
unfortunately, because it's. And I hate to use this illustration, Ken, but please bear with me.
yes,
One of our dear anti-Common Core warriors years ago, she said, here's the thing with the two-party system. First of all, we're never supposed to have it because we're seeing exactly the fruit of it right now. Is that there are too many things that are happening from both sides that are ending up in the same amount of damage. And she's a good old Southern gal, and she looks at me, and we've spoken at the North Carolina General Assembly to try to help with education and inform the lawmakers about what was going on with Common Core.
yeah.
And we did okay, but they went ahead and decided to change anything, change the law anyway. And she looks at me and she goes, this is why we don't have the two-party system, because with the way they're doing, it's like you're trying to pick up the clean end of a turd. There is no clean end. And so this is, I'm sorry to use that illustration, but that's the bare bone truth of it. There's no clean end of it.
Yeah, exactly. And so I understand exactly what you're saying, and yeah,
And I'm
I
sorry I
believe
went there.
that we're stuck in this particular situation. I have a preference for Donald Trump, uh, to vote for him. Am I happy with the overall in terms of education? No. Am I happy when it comes to the 501c3 status? No. But this is what we need Congress, and this is the thing. There are lots of conservatives who are watching tonight, and they're saying, well, I've been watching the polls, and the polls said that the left are going to take over, so there's no sense in me being active. I don't have to do anything. Uh, do you agree with that type of thinking?
No, because here's the thing, right? Even if you realize that you might lose in any battle, and remember, we can't predict. I mean, we can predict, but we don't know the outcome.
Yeah.
Okay, we just don't. But my philosophy on this is, and this is how I've attacked everything I've ever had to battle. Okay,
Yes.
even if I lose by a country mile, Ken, I will fight tooth and nail. I will give them the biggest figurative black eye that I can, so that by the time it's done, they will know who I am, what I stand for, and I will not back down.
There you go. That's what we need, America. We need that from you. Ladies and gentlemen, Lynne Taylor, Common Core Diva. It is always a joy to have her on tonight. There is a great concern about the conflation of the UN policies regarding Agenda 21 and their increase in terms of our education policies. And Lynn is absolutely right. If we don't hold everyone's feet to the fire, we will have generations of children who have been prepared for the communist rule. And we need to stop that altogether. Ladies and gentlemen, Lynne Taylor, God bless you. We love you. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thanks, Ken.
Ladies and gentlemen, you know what we do at this particular hour of the night. I always have to ask you two basic questions. Number one, do you know where your children are? But number two, do your children know where you are? We'll be right back.
It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are?
It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are?